That's what you say, right? Yeah, that's right. Because sometimes we can be so dumb and so foolish, do our own thing, you know, and we can have like this, we just keep going, and after that we get ourselves lost and we went astray. But the Bible often describes God as a shepherd. I think the most stressful job is to be a shepherd. If you're a shepherd of 1,000 sheep, and you have 1,000 dumb sheep, and have 1,000 dumb, restless, hyperactive sheep, how are you going to be a shepherd? All the best to you, you know. You can imagine the sheep was bye-bye, okay, you don't believe, right? You just volunteer yourself for the next children's camp at your church. And some of you are really very frustrated already. Yeah? Listen to me, man! You know that kind of thing. And then there's a guy bake, after that, you realize that it takes 2 hours to bake. And then the floor all wet, you know that kind of thing. And it's like, enough. And that's little children with brains, with reasoning. Can you imagine you have 1,000 sheep? Sorry, 1,000 dumb sheep who are very active. Very stressful. But that's often how the Bible describes us. Because as the shepherd, he takes good care of the sheep. And so there's this parable that talks about how when the sheep was lost, the shepherd will go and find that sheep. Not only has he the power to make all things, he made all things good. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. He makes all things good. And so here we now have portrayed to us by the psalmist that God is great and that God is good. So just now our brother said, rock of our salvation. Now if you read very carefully, you can be the rock, when you are great. When you think of salvation, you think that God is good enough to want to save us. So when the psalmist says, He is the rock of my salvation, he's saying God is great enough to be my rock and it is good enough to want to save me. Just giving some time for something. In that one phrase, the rock of our salvation has in it the idea of greatness and has in it the idea of goodness. You know, I was at camp, right? And someone said, what's the difference between great and good? Is there a difference? And I asked the question, can someone be great and not good? Example? Think of someone who's great but not good.
Hitler.
Very good. Hitler is a great guy. Sorry, he's not good. What did I say? No, he's not. He's not a great guy. He's a guy who has a lot of power and a lot of authority. So there is greatness in him, but it's not like he's a great guy. He definitely ain't a great guy. But he has a lot of power and has a lot of authority. But the one thing about Hitler is we all know that he has massacred or killed many, many Jews. So if you are great and you are not good, you are not great enough. Is there a possibility that you are good and you are not great? Example? Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Your head. Actually, the uncle who's dressed in orange right in front of you thinks that he's good, but he's definitely not great. You know, when my boys fall ill, right, I feel so helpless. There was one time when his body broke up all into rashes and hives, right? 2 a.m. I had no idea what to do. And it's just hives and rashes. And he says, very itchy, very itchy. He keeps talking, he keeps telling me it's very itchy throughout the night. And you know, as a father, I've never felt so helpless before. You know, I can be very concerned for him, you know, but I can't even relieve him of his itch. That's how not great we are. You need a great God to save you. Because if a God is not great, he can't save you. but he must be good enough to want to save you too. Many of us, right, often take God's greatness and goodness for granted. And we don't think about it enough. I want to show you a video. Some of you may have seen this video before. After you watch the video, you'll know why I show you this video. Okay, if you are quiet, then you start. You know, when I watch that video, right, a lot of people see different things in the video. Some people watch the video, they get very inspired that, you know, this guy finished the race. Some people watch the video and get very inspired and says never give up. You know, because my mind is very tuned to the greatness and goodness of God, right? When I watch that video, that father reminds me of God, and that runner reminds me of me. The reason why I'm very inspired by that video is not because he finished the race, but because when he was not able to finish, the Father came down and finished the race with him. Oftentimes when I'm very overwhelmed by my difficulties and my failures, the thought that comes to my mind is, don't give up, press on, you'll succeed. But the thought that God the Father will help me finish the race, so that I will finish well at the end, is always the thought that encourages me. You see, my friends, if you are very tuned to the greatness and the goodness of God, you will see God's goodness and greatness everywhere, including a very short video like this and other videos. But many a times, because our minds are not glued in that direction, right, we read different things into different things that we see. Do you know this guy is an Olympic runner? And do you know how many races he ran that he won a medal? Many. But when you go into Google or YouTube, you cannot find a YouTube recording of the race that he won. But this video on the race he didn't win and tried to finish. In fact, it is this particular YouTube that has inspired 9 million views. Not when he finished by himself, but when he can't, the Father finishes it with him. You see, in my life, right, because I'm constantly aware that God is very great and God is very good to me, I can only finish my life because I have a Father who cares enough and who is powerful enough to help me finish. So it's very important for us that we appreciate the greatness of God and the goodness of God. The problem is we don't know how good and how great He is. Because we are so busy in our lives, we are doing so many things, we don't even give it a thought. Sometimes, even if we know, we don't care. We don't care enough about how great and how good He is. And because our minds are not glued towards the greatness and the goodness of God, guess what? There's reason why life is full of anxiety. There are reasons why people are so arrogant, so ungrateful. There are reasons why sometimes our life is so resentful, so angry, so negative, so cynical. Actually, all these things comes out because we don't know enough that God is great and God is good and we don't care. And you become a different person. And that is the one thing that I pray that I will never become. A person who is arrogant, proud, ungrateful, a person who is very anxious about things because, I think that I'm in control of everything. And I don't grow up to be a very angry person, a bitter person. And say, why God allow all these things to happen? Because when you find that you talk to people who are very negative and critical, you move away because there's nothing good to say. But you become such a person if you are not overwhelmed by the fact that God is really great, God is really good. Conversely, when you are overwhelmed with that, then you actually see it in many of the things, like the video that I showed you. Then you see a father finishing his race with his son. Just now I started off by asking you guys, right, how do you start liking a person, isn't it? How do you know that a girl has fallen in love? And how do you know a guy has fallen in love? Do you all know? I've got a friend who can see through one. Once he see you talking to a person of opposite gender, he can almost tell you, I think the guy is interested in the girl. He can see. He's got this special BGR eyes. And he's actually right 9 out of 10 times. So how do you know, right, a person likes another person? How do you know? Blushing. Okay. So at least you know that when I talk to you, you blush means you like me. It's okay, right? It's okay. It's alright to like me. Up to a certain point, you have to show point. Don't go Do you know when the girls, right, when they start liking a guy, do you know what happens? The girl talk about the guy, right? Like for example, you have one girl go JC, then like this guy, the guy like her, then she find another girl also like another guy, then you go